Hi friends, in this video lecture I am going to talk about Old English literature. So, Old English literature is also called Anglo Saxon literature. Anglo Saxons were people who inhabited Great Britain from 5th century. So, the early Anglo Saxon period includes the creation of English nation. Anglo Saxon basically invaded what is known as the current England around the year 450. And they were the dominant group until the Norman conquest happened in 1066 AD. What happened after Norman conquest? After Norman conquest, we see Middle English or Anglo-Saxon or Anglo-Norman period started. So, Old English literature was started by Anglo-Saxon, who were the people who known as Anglo-Saxon. So, they were people who came from Germany. Anglo-Saxons were basically three Germanic tribes. One is Anglo, second is Saxon, and third is Jews, who came from Germany and settled in the Great Britain in 5th century. And after their settlement, there arose a formation of English nation. One important thing you want to remember that these Anglo-Saxon people didn't believe in Christianity. Rather, they followed pagan religion. So pagan religion basically people who doesn't believe in God. But then what happened is that they come with their own pagan beliefs, but arrival of Saint Augustine in 597 convert most of the country to Christianity. In this time, Saint Augustine tried to put on Christian beliefs in all over the Europe. This time, which is in 597, he comes to England and he spread Christianity there. In the 8th century, we find that the Anglo-Saxons started getting influenced by Christianity, and in their works also we can see the Christian ideals. Now let us look at the literary characteristics of the period. So the first important thing that you must remember is that the Old English language or Anglo-Saxon is the foundation of modern English. Although the untrained modern English speakers like us could not be able to understand that particular language. Also, we must understand Anglo-Saxon people spoken is what is known as Old English, which is a combination of native Briton language and Germanic tribal tongue that they brought with them. So, songs and poetry were very important components in the Anglo-Saxon society. Poems were conveyed orally, but then they started to appear in written form in 1733 AD. Also, one very important thing that we have to remember is one of the most valued member of Anglo-Saxon society was a poet or a scop who discussed social and cultural values in his work. So, scop, which means SCOPE. So, scops were responsible for maintaining a person's reputation through songs after his or death. They want to praise these people's bravery and achievements in the society through their poems. So, this is how poetry was spread at that time in the entire country. Christianity was a religion of Britons, but when Anglo-Saxon invention happened, Christianity was suppressed. But over the following years, these Germanic tribes converted to Christianity, and these ideals became popular in the Anglo-Saxon literature. Also, at the same time, they didn't just talk about the Christian ideals in their poetry, but they give much attention to the Germanic heroic past. So they used to talk about all the heroes that existed in the Germanic mythology and all those great heroes who were at some point of time living in Germany. The main important thing that you will remember in poetry is that there were used caesura. It is basically having break in the middle of the line. For example, we take the line twinkle twinkle little star. We divide it into two. That is twinkle twinkle in one side and made a gap and then write little star. This is called caesura, CASURA. The second thing is that they use the alliterative words. Alliterative words is very common in Old English. And one of the main thing that used in the Old English poetry is kenning, Kenning. Kenning, it is a literary device, which means when we use component words to denote something, to describe things indirectly. Kenning, the term which derived from notes and Anglo Saxon poetry, it is a stylistic device defined as a two-word phrase that describes an object through a metaphor. It is also described as compressed metaphor. It is another meaning, another name is called compressed metaphor. Kenning, which is another name is compressed metaphor, which means meaning illustrated in a few words. For example, we can say that a two-word phrase, that is Whale Road. What Whale Road represents is the sea. The whale only can transport through sea. So another example is Bond House. Bond House, which represent our human body. The house of bones, that is our human body. Okay, that is Kenning. Kenning, which is the term which is derived from notes and Anglo-Saxon poetry. It is a stylistic device and defined as a two-word phrase that described an object through a metaphor. And when we use a compound words to denote something, to describe things indirectly. Okay, Anglo-Saxon invaders didn't bring with them prose. They brought with them their own poetry because poetry is artistic. We don't require prose until and unless we want to keep record. So prose developed due to Christianization in England. So we know that when Anglo-Saxon come to England, they were come England as pagans, which means they are basically not believe in any god. After the coming of Saint Augustine, in this time he spread Christianization all over Europe, and when they come in 597, they convert the Germanic tribes also into Christians. So after the first important thing that you must remember, that the Old English language, Anglo-Saxon is the modern English foundation of the founder of modern English. And also we come to the main point that songs and poetries were a very important component of Anglo-Saxon society. Poems were conveyed orally, but then they started appearing in written form in 1733 AD. And the main important things that we see in the poetry is, one is Sosera. Sosera is basically having break in the middle of the line. We say that the example, Twinkle Twinkle in Little Star. We divided Twinkle Twinkle and Little Star into two. And then another important thing is alliterative words. Alliterative words is very common in Old English. Next is Kenning. Kenning is a literary device, which means when we use compound words to denote something, to describe things indirectly. That is Whale Road, which represent the sea. And another thing is Bond House, using human body representation. So this is it for today. We talked the background of English literature and we understand how the literature arrives through Anglo-Saxon. So keep learning, stay safe and stay tuned to KeyNotes.